thanks for tuning in. Here we are back again with part 4 of Inheritance Bloodlines. David Shaw got a visit last chapter, and is none the worse for wear. Bruised and battered, what will he do next? If you haven't heard the other parts, check the link in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Now sit back and get comfy. It's time for Inheritance Bloodlines 4.
David Shaw sat in the truck, engine off, canopy lights bleeding yellow across the windshield. His ribs ached, his head throbbed from the hit. But pain wasn't the problem. He had people he could call, names in his phone, faces in his memory, men who owed him favors, men who could handle trouble that bled and broke bones. But this wasn't that sort of problem. That thing in his house hadn't moved like a man, hadn't looked at him like one either. Black pits for eyes, skin crawling over bone. It hadn't come to intimidate, it had come to end him. And that meant Shaw was already behind in a game he didn't understand. Step 1. Find a place to hole up, mend wounds, strategize. A safe house in plain sight was suicide. They already knew where he lived. That meant they knew his roots. If he was going to dig in, it had to be somewhere no one, not even an old friend, would guess. That's what took him to City Hall. The records department was quiet. Just a clerk's keyboard clicking under the hum of fluorescent lights. Shaw signed in under a fake name, told the clerk he was researching structural history for a preservation project. She barely looked up before pulling up the property database. Most of it was worthless. Strip malls, condemned houses, city-owned warehouses. Then he found it. A dockside warehouse from 1927. The plans showed a full basement and what looked like a sub-basement, though it wasn't labeled. A tunnel ran from it, disappearing off the blueprint. Later revisions, 1964, 1981, made no mention of either. The stairwell simply vanished. At the public library, he pulled a brittle 1928 Sanborn fire insurance map. There it was again. Basement in faint blue pencil, and beneath it a larger unmarked rectangle. No doors, no windows, just a shape that wasn't supposed to exist. Someone had erased it from modern records. That was enough for him. He couldn't just stroll in like he owned the place. Needed it quiet, invisible. In the cab of his truck, he scrolled past most of the names in his phone. Too risky, too many questions. Then he stopped on one, Eli Barrett, ex-military like him. A bad job in Mogadishu. Another in Kandahar where Shaw had pulled him out. They hadn't spoken in over a year. He hit call. "Shaw?" Eli answered after the second ring, dry voice, steady with a buried note of warmth. "Been a while? What's up?" "I need a favor." A low chuckle. "Say no more. For what you did for me back then." "I got you, brother. What's going on?" "Got into a pinch with some heavy hitters. Case I was working. Got too close." "You need backup?" "No. Just a place to lay low and set up shop. Somewhere no one's gonna think to look for me." "You got a spot in mind?" "Old warehouse. Solid bones. Needs power and water. And it can't come back to me." Eli didn't hesitate. "If you want to keep this off the radar, keep it legit. I'll buy it, set up a shell company, put the utilities in the company name. As far as the city's concerned, you're just doing work there." Shaw exhaled, tension easing slightly. "Appreciate it." "Anything else you need, you let me know," Eli said. "I've got people. Some still owe me, same way I owe you. Could be useful." He filed that away. "Thanks, Eli. I mean it." "You got me out of more holes than I care to count," Eli said. "Feels good to return the favor. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. It would be a few days before Eli called back, so Shaw would have to live out of his truck in the meantime. parking in dead spots, catching sleep where no one would think to look. Now for step 2. He was in the deep end now. It was either sink or swim at this point. His bruised ribs reminded him with every breath he took of this realization. He pulled his phone out again, not for contacts this time, but for the only place he figured might have answers: the internet. An hour later, he was 3 forums deep into threads that sounded insane to most people. But some details rang too true, matching what he'd seen with his own eyes. That night, he found it. The pit. Buried under the noise of conspiracy posts and troll bait was a core group that spoke like they'd been there, precise, almost military in their detail. They argued over sigil strokes like mechanics over torque specs, swapped photographs of claw marks and burn patterns like detectives comparing crime scenes. Shaw reached out to a few of them, but some just responded back sounding batshit crazy, and others just not responding back at all. He was about to hang it up as he peered out the window of his vehicle. The rays of the sun were beginning to disappear. Time has a way of slipping through your fingers like sand when your face is buried deep in the screen of your phone. Then he saw another post, with one poster that seemed to have the respect of the other users posting. This name kept coming up: Tenebrarum Venator X. He was on all the posts that mattered, giving info and correcting. Shaw messaged him. The reply came 2 minutes later. "If you've seen one, time is of the essence. Tell me everything. Don't lie. I'll know." That was how it began. Shaw gave him the basics: what came into his house, how it moved, what it looked like. He left out the parts he still couldn't explain without sounding drunk. After a few minutes, a message came back. "Your place is burned. You did right looking for somewhere new. Now you must ward it as soon as you move in." "What the hell does ward mean?" David muttered. "I'm sending you 3 sigils. Learn them. Draw them in black chalk, paint, or blood if you have to. 1 above every door, 1 on every entry point. The last goes under wherever you sleep. Don't improvise. It could cost you your life, or your very soul." 3 image files came through. Crude, hand-drawn shapes, not movie-perfect pentagrams. They looked scratched into stone and jagged. Ward 1 keeps lesser forms from crossing the threshold. Ward 2 masks your presence from anything hunting. Ward 3 disrupts possession attempts while you sleep. He sat in the car looking at the symbols. There was an unsettling calm about them that seemed to seep into his soul, a power resonating from them. He didn't know how far he'd have to go, but he knew that time would tell the tale. As night came, Shaw picked up stakes and headed to the edge of town, parked his vehicle, crawled in the back seat with his trusty Glock in hand to get some much-needed sleep. Over the next few days, he moved from place to place, never staying in the same place twice. Tenebrarum Venator X was like an encyclopedia. Just when you thought that was all, you'd find out it was only a drop in the bucket. He was the teacher and Shaw was the student. He knew he had a lot to learn to get on even footing with what he would have to face eventually. The phone rang. It was Eli. He answered. "Shaw." The response was quick. "It's done. The place is up and running. Let me know if you need anything else." "This will do for now. Thanks for the assist." "Don't be a stranger," Eli responded. Shaw, done with sleeping in his vehicle, headed to the spot. It sat on the edge of the industrial district, far enough from the river that no one passed by without a reason. The loading bay was a hollow echo chamber, windows swallowed by warped plywood. To most, it was worthless. Another husk, waiting for the wrecking ball. To Shaw, it was perfect. A place forgotten, exactly what he needed. with phone in hand after orienting himself with the photos he took of the blueprints. He found the sealed access point without too many issues, a concrete slab in the main floor where the old stairwell should have been. The bolts in the steel hatch were rusted to hell, but not enough to stop a little grease, pry bar, and patience. The air that rose up from the dark smelled of dust, rust, and stone that hadn't seen daylight in decades. It was more than a basement. It was a bunker. High ceiling, old support beams, thick brick walls. No windows, only one way in or out, but that could be changed over time. A secret hideaway always needed an escape route. But for now this would do. Over the next few days he worked at making it livable. The den, what Shaw had come to call it, wasn't much. A cot, a duffel bag, and a coffee maker. But it was his. And for the first time since that thing came into his home, he felt like he'd stolen back an inch of ground. The next day he worked on making it livable. Storage, workbenches, a few tools, the kind of setup that would let him think, plan, and move when he needed to. As he shifted a shelf into place, his mind drifted back to his talks with Tenebrarum Venator-X and the gnawing question he'd been avoiding. Did Harold send that thing after him? Was it supposed to scare him off or kill him outright? He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen before he started typing. If Harold wouldn't answer his calls, maybe he'd answer this. What gives? We've been friends since we were kids. Did you send that thing to my home? After me? He didn't wait for a reply, just shoved the phone back in his pocket and got on with his work. Across town, the message lit Harold's phone. He stared at it, jaw tightening, before setting it face down on the desk. From the far corner, that smooth, measured voice slid into the air like a blade easing from its sheath. Problem? Velros asked, the tone surgical, meant to cut and probe at once. Harold's eyes locked on the shadowed figure. I told you David Shaw was off limits, he hissed, each word clipped and sharp. Did you send one of your pets after him? Velros stepped forward, his smirk catching the low light. Pets? You make them sound so obedient. That wasn't part of our deal. Well, Velros said, voice cool as black ice. He was sniffing around where he doesn't belong. I warned you. Eventually he'd find you. He doesn't know anything, Harold snapped. I'm in charge here. You're here because I summoned you. You don't call the shots. Velros's expression shifted, a flicker of contempt rippling across his otherwise flawless features. His eyes caught the light, embers stoked by some hell-born wind. Well, he let the word breathe, heavy and slow. It seems the gloves are off. You've grown, Harold, more than I expected. Grown enough that it's time you heard the ugly truth. Harold's voice was low. What truth? Velros leaned in, hellfire burning in his gaze. You punished the wrong man. Yates was possessed. More innocent than you'll ever be. And you... His smirk was deliberate, cruel. You came willingly. All it took was a little coaxing. A flicker of confusion passed over Harold's face. There he is, the man I met all those moons ago. Velros's grin widened. I had Yates kill your daughter. I whispered to your wife, Victoria, until she broke. I planted the book you thought you found. Every step, Harold, I laid it. You walked it. The blood drained from Harold's face. His hands trembled. You think you summoned me? Velros said, voice a low, venomous laugh. I summoned myself. The dam broke. With a roar, Harold lunged, his fist cracking across Velros's jaw, sending the demon sprawling. Papers scattered across the floor as Harold stormed toward the door, chest heaving, mind unraveling. Only Velros's laughter followed him out, curling after him like smoke from a burning world. Hours later, Shaw's phone buzzed. It was Harold. One new message. I really messed things up. We need to talk. Shaw saw the message and thought now he'd get some real answers. Just wait to hear back for the meeting. The den was coming along nicely. He eyed a perfect spot for a shelf on the far wall. As he began to drill the shelf into place, the drill bit stopped cold with a clank. Not the dull thud of brick, but the sharp ring of metal. He stepped back, ran his hand over the wall. The spot was smoother than the rest, a thin layer of plaster flaking under his fingers. Shaw fetched a chisel and started scraping. The plaster came away in chunks, revealing the outline of an iron door set flush into the brickwork. No handle, just a recessed keyhole and hinges so corroded they looked fused to the frame. The paint was the same as the surrounding wall, a perfect disguise. He worked the hinges with penetrating oil, levering the door bit by bit until the rust gave up with a screech that echoed in the small room. The air that rolled out was cool and faintly damp, carrying the scent of old earth, machine oil, and something else. Whiskey, maybe. Beyond was a narrow tunnel, timber-braced and disappearing into black. He tested the air. There was movement, faint but steady, ventilation, an escape route if it came to that. He smiled to himself. The den had just gotten a second way out. He exhaled but remembered what Tenebrarum Venator X had messaged him. He needed to set about placing the wards to secure this new place of his. Shaw used paint markers to etch them above the hatch, along the brick seams, and under the cot he'd dragged into a corner. Then came the last instruction. Mark the poles on your block. Every light source. Same wards, low enough to touch but high enough no kid can scratch them off. It's not a wall, but it's a curtain they'll think twice about pushing through. By dawn, his hands were black with ink, his ribs aching from bending and reaching. He had worked straight through the night, but he could rest easy now knowing the place had been warded from any demons. He sat on the cot in the corner of the den and thumbed through his phone. No new messages from Harold, body aching. He laid back on the cot, as sleep took him. He didn't wake up until the following morning. His body needed more rest than he thought. This was the best sleep he had gotten in days. Sleeping in a vehicle just doesn't revitalize the body no matter how long you sleep. It had been over 2 days since he last spoke with Tenebrarum Venator X. Now, with an official work area, he could organize information and research a bit more efficiently. Shaw jumped on his laptop and shot him a quick email. Sorry for the disappearing act. I got the place I told you about squared away. Did as you said. The place is warded, but I think it's time I met this situation head on. Need some guidance on how to go on the offense. He hit send and waited. As he waited, his gaze drifted to the phone resting beside the laptop. It had been days since Harold's name lit the screen. He thumbed it open and stared at the last message he'd sent, and the last he'd gotten back. I really messed things up. We need to talk. A knot tightened in his gut. That was it. No time or location, no explanation. Just silence. Before the unease could settle deeper. On the laptop, his inbox blinked. Tenebrarum Venator X. Thought they had gotten you. Glad you are okay. We have done enough foreplay. It's time we had a good old-fashioned meet and greet. In the email was a number. Shaw called and they talked. By that afternoon, Shaw had agreed to meet him. The price of that meeting? A hunt. A demon hunt, to be exact. Baptism by fire. They agreed to meet 2 cities over for obvious reasons, somewhere far enough that eyes and ears wouldn't follow. The rendezvous, a dim corner booth at a small-town bar with sun-faded beer signs, and the faint smell of stale smoke in the air. Shaw was there first, with coffee in hand and watching the entrance. At exactly noon, the door swung open and he walked in. The man looked like he belonged to no single place. the kind of weather-beaten drifter you couldn't quite pin down. Broad-shouldered, in a scuffed leather jacket and worn jeans, he moved with quiet purpose. His gaze never stayed still, darting to doorways, windows, shadows under tables. Not frantic, but methodical, like he was checking an invisible list only he knew. A worn leather glove wrapped his right hand, the edges of gauze peeking out underneath. Shaw noticed he kept that hand close to his body, resting on the table only when he sat down. "You, Shaw?" Venator X asked, voice low and even, though his eyes kept moving, scanning the bar. "That's me." He gave a single nod, eyes flicking toward the door before coming back. "Good. Then let's skip small talk. You want in? You're getting in the hard way." His eyes finally settled on Shaw, just long enough to make the air between them feel heavier. "You want to learn how to fight them, you can't do it from behind a desk. You've got to see what they are, feel it, smell it." He leaned back in the booth, scanning the room again before continuing. "Tonight we go after one. Not a major player, I'm not stupid, but it'll try to kill you all the same. You'll see the tricks, the smell, the way the air feels wrong before it shows itself." Shaw took a sip of his coffee. "And you're sure this isn't just a suicide run?" His mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. "If you're asking that, you're already thinking the right way." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a battered notebook, sliding it across the table. The pages were stained and smudged, full of cramped handwriting and rough sketches of symbols, maps, and something that looked vaguely human but too sharp at the joints. "Study those between now and sundown. We meet at the coordinates on the last page. Bring what you've got. I'll supply the rest." Shaw flipped to the final page. The location was a club on the outskirts of Olympia, just about an hour away. Underneath, in block letters, he wrote, "Don't be late." He stood, adjusting the glove on his right hand before sliding out of the booth. "One last thing. When we find it, you don't hesitate. If you do, it wins. And if it wins..." His eyes swept the bar one more time before meeting Shaw's. "You don't go home." Shaw looked up. "You never told me your name." He paused, eyes locking on Shaw's like he was weighing something. Then, slowly, a thin smirk formed. "If you make it through this hunt," he said, voice low and deliberate, "I'll give you that, and more." Without another word, he stepped away, the bell above the door chiming once before the bar settled back into its lazy, low conversation. Shaw headed back to the den, the old hatch sealing behind him with a hollow clang. He dropped his gear on the workbench and pulled out the leather-bound book he was given. The thing felt heavier than it looked, like it carried more than just pages. Shaw hadn't heard from Harold since that one cryptic message. He thumbed his phone, opened the thread, and fired off a quick line. "Let's meet up. No read receipt, no reply." A tight coil wound in his gut. Something was wrong, he could feel it. But there wasn't time to dwell. He had studying to do if he wanted to make it through whatever had in mind. The book was written in tight, slanted script, with drawings that looked like they belonged in the margins of an exorcist's personal Bible. He skimmed sections on wards and sigils, his eyes locking on a page marked with a faded red ribbon. "Salt rounds. Won't kill them, but they burn like holy fire on contact, enough to buy distance or break a charge. Iron and silver blades. Pierces the flesh that shouldn't be there. Searing wounds closed in ways they can't easily heal. Binding circles. Anchor points etched in salt, ash, and blood. Once inside, they can't cross without breaking the line, unless you break it first." He read until his eyes felt gritty, then set the book aside. A quick alarm on his phone, a bottle of water on the table next to the cot. He stretched out on the cot and was out in minutes. The alarm sounded. seemed to come far sooner than expected. There was no time to mull over the need for more sleep. Shaw gathered up his gear and headed out, sealing the den behind him. The drive took an hour, the road narrowing to 2 cracked lanes bordered by dead fields and skeletal trees. The meeting spot was a block away from their location of interest, now in a back alley away from prying eyes. Venator X was already there, leaning against an old pickup, a second man beside him. "This is Sean," he said, gesturing with his unbandaged hand. Sean had a medium but rugged build, clean-shaven, with the kind of easy grin that said he'd been doing this a while and enjoyed it a little too much. They moved to the tailgate where gear was laid out like a buffet of violence. Venator X's eyes swept Shaw's loadout: Glock, battered pump action, and a standard-issue army knife. "What are you packing in that?" he asked, nodding toward the shotgun. "Buck," Shaw said. "Double-aught." Venator X gave a short grunt. "Good for people, not so much for what we're after." Sean stepped in, glancing at the gun. "Yeah, Buck'll punch holes, but it won't keep him down. You want pain and slow down, not just a little tickle." Venator X dug in a crate, came up with a box marked in red marker. "Salt. Won't kill him, but it'll burn and slow him down. Think of it as pepper spray for hellspawn." He shoved the box into Shaw's chest. Then he pointed at the knife on Shaw's belt. "Let me see that." Shaw slid it free, hilt first. "Marine issue K-bar. Full tang, straight edge." Venator X turned it over, weighed it in his hand, and then, without warning, tossed it into the weeds. "Hey!" Shaw shouted, moving in the direction of the tossed K-bar. "Relax," he said, pulling a different blade from his own belt. It caught the light like it was alive. Iron core, silvered edge, faint lines of etched script running down both sides. Iron blade, dipped in silver, sigils on the grip and spine that looked suspiciously like dried blood. "Your KA bar's fine for gutting a man. This one'll bite into something that ain't supposed to be walking this side of existence and in the right spot can send it right back." He handed it over with a grin. "You'll thank me later." He then glanced at the Glock and then at Shaw. "If you've got to use that, we're already screwed." Sean laughed, clapping Shaw on the shoulder. Venator X joined in, the sound more amused than comforting. As the laughter died down, he pulled out a notebook. "Here's the skinny," he said, voice low and clipped. "This place we're headed, word through the network is people go in, and they don't come out the same. Some don't come out at all." A grim weight hung on his face. "I'm thinking demons, though I've never seen them operate like this. So tonight is recon first, but if we see something..." He adjusted the wrap on his burned hand, eyes narrowing. "We act. We stay off the main road, slip in through the rear. Far as anyone's concerned, we're just drunks, cutting through an alley. Clear?" The only reply was the faint hum of a streetlight above and the shuffle of their boots. Each man checked his gear, gave the others a curt nod, and they crossed into the shadows. The alley funneled them toward the club's rear door. A broad-shouldered man stood posted, arms loose at his sides, head tilting as if he already sensed them. "You smell that?" Shaw muttered, nose wrinkling. "Burnt eggs?" "Sulfur," Sean whispered. "That one's wearing skin. I got this. Just act drunk." They staggered up the alley, weaving like barflies on the wrong side of midnight. The guard eyed them but stayed cool. "Hey," Sean slurred. "This the new spot? Heard it's the place to be." The guard cracked a faint smile. "Closed tonight. Here." He flicked out a stack of business cards. "Bring one back. First drinks on the house." Sean reached forward, a sudden, harsh sneeze sending salt spraying into the man's face. The reaction was instant, flesh sizzled, blistering like acid on skin. The guard's eyes burned red, voice twisting into a growl. Before he could roar, Venator X Hunter's knife flashed. One practiced slice, throat to spine. The body convulsed, collapsed, then crumbled into ash. The breeze carried the remnants away as though he'd never stood there at all. Shaw had seen a man die before, but this was different. This was real. A man just turned to ash right in front of him, and how the men in front of him moved with practiced efficiency. He never saw Venator X draw the knife. Venator X glanced over at Shaw. "Welcome to the club," he muttered. No high fives were given as each man crouched and peered inside the open door. A faint hum of music could be heard coming over the speakers from inside. The club's guts were empty, but faint voices could be heard, male voices, chanting. They crept behind the bar and down a hall towards the back room, boots careful on the sticky floor. Through a cracked door, they saw it. A demon stood inside a chalked circle, eyes like molten coals, body twitching with a predator's impatience. Across from him stood a man, clothes tattered and torn, his eyes sunken. Two men stood next to him, one flanked to his right and the other to his left. Another lingered nearby, clinging to the shadows, each of them watching, smirking, like jackals circling fresh meat. The man whispered, "I accept." The demon lunged forward, smoke and shadow pouring into him. His body convulsed as the possession took hold, bones cracking, skin blistering, until his eyes snapped open, glowing sulfur yellow. Venator X muttered under his breath, "Shit. It's a pact." He looked at Shaw. "Now!" The three men burst through the door. The three demons snarled and met them as they rushed into the room. Shaw fired first, salt rounds exploding in the chest of the nearest one. The demon staggered but didn't fall, roaring as black blood oozed from the wounds. Shawn swung a silver-edged hatchet into another, burying it in its shoulder. The thing howled in pain, but with a swipe of its hand managed to catch Shawn across the back, sending him into the far wall so hard the plaster cracked. Before Shaw could turn, too slow, to face the other demon, it was already on him. Claws raked across his forearm, slicing deep through his jacket. He cried out, shotgun falling to the floor. The demon lunged for his throat, but Venator X managed to catch the demon by the collar, pulling it back before teeth met flesh. In one swift motion, he sent his blade into the base of its neck. Its body went limp and then was gone. All that was left was ash. "Stay on your feet, soldier," he barked. Shawn managed to get back to his feet as the second demon wrenched his hatchet free from its shoulder and slung it back at Shawn. Shawn jumped out of the path and watched as the hatchet went inside the wall from being thrown with such force. Shaw reached for his Glock but remembered what Venator X said and pulled the knife he was given instead. The third and final demon was stronger, the leader, clearly. It swung a bar stool like a weapon, catching Venator X across the ribs and sending him sprawling. Shaw made his way around to its blind spot and moved in closer to bury the blade in its back. The demon turned as Shaw brought the blade down, but it managed to block it with its hand. It grinned as black blood ran down the blade to the handle. "You don't even know what's coming," it shouted, voice two-toned. "Heard from Harold yet?" Shaw, caught off guard by the statement but driven with rage, shoved the demon into the wall and forced the blade into its neck. Black blood spurted out of the wound. It laughed as Shaw pinned it to the wall. He drove the knife deeper, laughter bubbling into a choking gurgle as it burst into ash. Then silence. Only the panting of men remained. The possessed man, the one who had just taken the pact, lay twitching on the floor. Shawn pressed a sigil he had removed from his jacket pocket to his forehead. An otherworldly growl filled the air as the demon spilled out of the man in a cloud of black smoke. It fled, screeching into the rafters, leaving the man unconscious but alive. Shaw leaned against the wall, arm dripping blood. "Jesus Christ!" Venator X spat, wiping ash off his blade. "Lower demons," and they still almost gave us a run for our money." He looked Shaw dead in the eye. "Now you see why the toys you brought wouldn't cut it." Shaw was quiet for a moment, catching his breath. Then he muttered, almost to himself, "That thing knew Harold. Asked me if I had heard from him yet." Vaniterex froze. "You mean the friend you told me about?" Shaw nodded. "Then your friend's in deeper than you know. And now, so are you. There may be far more going on than we realize. You earned your stripes tonight, Rook. You can call me Calder," he said with a smile. They exchanged a glance, something heavy in their eyes. Calder's voice dropped. "So that's why you came knocking. Seems you stumbled onto something but didn't have a clue what you had. But they know your friend, and that means they know you." The three men cleaned up the area and salted the place to hide that they were ever there. It was early morning when they parted ways, the sun just beginning to peek over the trees. Shaw drove in silence, body sore, arm bleeding through the bandage Calder had wrapped. The road blurred past in muted gray. His thoughts circled back to the fight, to the way the demon's words cut deeper than its claws. "Heard from Harold yet?" His phone buzzed. Shaw pulled to the shoulder, chest tight, hoping it was Harold at last. He thumbed the screen open. "Warren Blake, call me." Harold Mercer was found dead in the woods, naked. Strange symbol carved on his chest. The words seared into his brain. He read them once, twice, a third time, as though repetition could change the meaning. His stomach dropped, hollowing him out. Hands clenched on the wheel until the blood stopped flowing into his fingertips. He swallowed hard, but the bile rose anyway, burning the back of his throat. Harold, dead, mocked. Shaw sat there, frozen, the world around him muted and far away. The only sound was the pounding of his own heartbeat, heavy and uneven. And somehow, with a clarity that scared him more than the night's hunt, he knew. This was only the beginning.
Harold dead. Found naked in the woods. Now that's rough. It seems things have taken a turn for the worse. A once strong friendship now reduced to memories. Let me know if you are liking your Inheritance Bloodlines thus far. What do you think will happen next? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a tale from yours truly, the Keeper of Tales. Until next time, remember, if you ever get lost along your travels, let our light be your guide.